We are back, ladies and gentlemen. It is the Bootu Boys, and by we, I mean me, Manly Van Lee. Why do I keep saying it? I don't even use that
I
anymore.
like it. I think you should bring it back.
Okay, well, I'm Van Lee, and I use Manly Van Lee as a name because it rhymes.
It does.
Not because I'm particularly manly. But what is masculinity, Spencer?
Well, it's working on a forge.
Brian, what is femininity?
Being in touch with your feelings and the feelings of those around you.
We are covering Forged in Fire once again on today's episode. We're doing Season 4, Episode 5, Fan's Choice. And let me tell you, this fan has a choice when it comes to the contestants on today's episode. Much like last week, there will be 4 people in a hot forge hammering and
Being judged.
Kind of, but like sweetly.
Kind of and kindly.
Judging me softly.
That's my brother, kindly.
Before we actually go on with what's actually going to be on the episode, which guy is it that says, last time I did this for my wife who was dying of cancer, she's fine, now I'm doing this for me? Is that Chad? Okay.
The redhead.
Just making sure.
Mm-hmm.
So now, go ahead.
Yeah, that's precisely what he's
Chad's
doing.
Chad's a bitch.
Well, not a lot has changed from Season 3 to Season 4 in Forged in Fire. And to be honest, when I selected the episodes, typically when we do a show, I'll pick an early season episode and a late season one so we can see how it changes. That doesn't matter. This
Not
is a
really
competition.
necessary.
Bladesmithing is the same stuff that they used in 2015 to now. It
That's
hasn't
right.
changed.
And
No,
it's changed
actually-
in tens of thousands of years.
After season 5, things get a little wackier when the writing team starts to kind of turn over.
Admittedly, they do more goofy stuff, like you have to take a car apart before you can make your knife.
Yeah.
But
Well, you
it's
run
still the
out of
same.
normal stuff and you run out of non-Goldberg stuff you can do. There's a spinoff with Goldberg. We covered that in our last episode, but if you didn't, for some reason, listen to that, very important to know that there's a Goldberg spinoff of this sword show.
That's right. And go listen to our last episode, available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. YouTube.com/Bootu Inc.
Jackhammer it into your ears.
Later on in this season, Jason Knight no longer fills in for Jay Giles or whatever his name was. So that guy returns to the show. But this episode, we still have the same judges as the ones we covered last week. We've got Jason Knight, Dave Baker, Doug Marcaida. There is a twist this time around, however. In the opening sequence to the episode, host Will Willis reveals the catch for today's show, which is that the show held a poll for which contestants the show's fans want to return to the Forge for a second time after they initially lost on the show.
And the second catch is that he straightened his hair.
It's not that dog haircut anymore,
No.
which is an improvement, I think.
It's hard to tell.
Do you guys like this idea in
Yeah.
theory? I
Yeah.
do. I think it's a smart plan. Although you run the risk of getting maybe some obvious choices that the fans might not necessarily have the right reasons for liking. I think there's a risk in that. But I like the concept.
You're saying it's kind of like the thing where if they have an internet poll where you name something, someone always goes Bodie McBoatface.
Yeah, can we really trust the fans to pick the 4 most interesting people?
All-star game voting for any sport.
Right. All I needed was one contestant on the show who's brought back by the fans for me to say, you did it right, fans.
Yeah.
The other 3
and
I
for
don't
me
even care
to
about.
see, like, oh, I see what the show's audience wants.
There is footage from the episode to come playing over this voiceover, but we'll ignore that for now and just get into the episode. Just like last week, the show opens with shots of the Forge, and each contestant introduces themselves one by one. First up, we have Robby Bowman, the blacksmithing cowboy of the Great Smokey Mountains.
That's what I've been calling him that for a long time.
And it stuck.
I love how Robby says, people call me this, as if that rolls off the tongue quickly and smoothly.
And he has that one catchphase that I just did
Yeah.
that he uses for every situation,
Yeah,
including being sick.
And in his hour-long matches with Dusty Rhodes.
Well, he's a little guy. He's got a big black cowboy hat on with cowboy boots and a heavy Southern accent. He says he's thrilled the fans have chosen him to give a second chance to, and also, woo!
And this is a big drawl of an accent, and I think he's hamming it up a little.
Gotta
Maybe.
be.
Don't care. Enjoyed it.
This is an example of not knowing at first what I thought of people and then gradually growing fonder. And Robby for me was that. He was so annoying to me for the first half of the episode, and then I started liking him.
Here at this juncture, I like Robby, but I did like him more by the time he
seemed
meets his fate.
He was so vulnerable toward the end.
And I mean, like, look, the 3 of us, when we see a cowboy, I think our inclination is to be like, ugh.
And the
But-
one note woo just really pissed me off. It was like, please shut up, Robby. It's not funny.
Chad Osborne is up next, and he's kind of a sassy dude with a red beard. He says the fans called him back because hopefully he's a nice guy. And anyway, this time, he's going to make a blade that is forge-a-licious.
First time he says that.
Of 8.
It is
It's too many.
really frustrating. It's kind of an opposite Robby here in that Chad, this first time I was like, I think he's a little annoying, but whatever. And then later, I became overly annoyed. Is he in some sort of legal trouble where he's not allowed to wear a logo? Like every clothing item he has is just one solid color.
Very bland.
Including his goatee, just one solid color.
The third contestant is Josh Weston, a guy who most definitely looks like he owns a specialty burger restaurant in like a liberal city's downtown location.
I can see that.
Very
I
hipster.
thought co-founded a hipster brewery
Something
with his friend from
that's
college.
Definitely, yeah, I could see that for sure. He's so put together, very carefully
He has
sculpted.
belts for suspenders that he wears for real.
He's got a nicely manicured thick beard.
I don't like that.
You don't
I
like the
don't
beard?
like when people do too much to their
I
beard.
think he was trying just way too hard. I understand
Yes.
it's good to be, I don't want to say concerned about your appearance, but to be trying to put the best version of yourself out there, absolutely. He looks like he went 4 or 5 steps too far to me.
Okay.
Spencer, to your point, trying too hard is what he seems to be doing at everything.
Yes.
And he doesn't feel natural or real at all. He does seem like a nice guy. I do think he probably is.
Except for the parts when he's coming unglued, and then he
Yes.
seems insane.
But those seem a little forced and maybe for the camera.
I hope so, because
But so does everything he does.
if there's a real guy who like seems like such a nice guy and then gets that upset
Yeah.
at the drop of a hat, I'm getting away from
That's
that
not
guy.
a guy I'd consider
No.
forge-a-licious.
He just looks like he gets super anxious all the time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like any sort of dilemma,
But in-
anxious.
In the way where mommy and daddy maybe gave him everything he wanted. I don't
Could
know.
be.
He comes across as a guy with a lot of means.
That comes out later for sure. I feel like the anxiety part I can relate to, but I internalize it. I suck that up and I suffer, and I don't make everyone else deal with my anxiety. And I recommend that you all do that. Don't let anyone know that you're suffering from anxiety.
Suffer
Just keep it
in
in.
silence.
This is how I'm a doctor. Spencer is a therapist.
Uh-huh.
It's perfect.
We never thought about how we have all aspects of health covered.
We're covered.
And between that mental health advice and Van's bone number advice, I think we're really doing quality
We're
work here.
Pretty educational.
Perhaps world-changing work.
Josh also has that hair where the sides are all like buzzed, but then there's a lot on top,
Yes.
and it's slick straight back, very greasy.
Prohibition era haircut is
Right.
what that is.
Josh says that he thinks the reason he was voted back onto the show by the fans was because the first time around he really struggled with stuff, and as the episode progressed, his slick back, greasy hair went from slick back to wildly up and pointing everywhere, and he kind of acts faux embarrassed about it. I think it's a little cute how he acts with
Yeah,
it,
sure.
but also once you see enough of this guy, it's like,
It just goes on and on.
I do wonder about Josh. Again, like there are good qualities to Josh, I guess, but like I'm surprised he was a fan favorite. I wouldn't have guessed that the audience of Forge and Fire were big into guys who really like to say the word apothecary.
I think the real reason is we'll say 95% of the contestants on Forge and Fire are just men without personality. So you get a guy with attitude.
There's a certain
It stands
type
out.
of well-ish to do, middle class to upper middle class, white male who college educated who wants to work with their hands only because like they thought Ron Swanson was
Sure.
cool on
Right,
Parks and
yeah.
Rec.
like the concept of it was
The-
so appealing. He had
yeah.
to learn about it.
And some of them, sure, they can get good at it, but it isn't, as we've talked about, it's not a super even playing field. It's like, okay, I'm a musician. I'm not someone who was trained in it from the age of 5,
right.
you know, because my parents didn't want me to be one. There are a lot of things like this that there just are inherent advantages, and I think perhaps having a Prohibition era haircut gives you that advantage.
Moving on to our final contestant. We have, I guess I would say, the most amazing, rotund, wonderful contestant has ever been on any game show ever, not just Forge and Fire. His name is Ray Kirk, and he is just an oval of a man, just very orb-shaped.
We've talked about contestants getting too heated or perhaps being too nonchalant or overconfident. What if I told you there's a man who has it all figured out?
Well, this is that man. He's 72 years young, Brian. He's a young pup.
Age is just a number, as Will told us last episode.
Right.
As
Contestant
Will says it, yeah.
It's true.
right.
And second of all, inside, that's a teen. He has the
Sure.
spunky spirit of a convivial teen, but the wisdom of an owl.
You didn't like Frank's smile. How do you feel about Ray's?
It's wonderful.
Yeah,
Warm,
it's
slow.
warm.
he
Yes.
does a lot
Yeah.
of little boy grins over
Yeah.
the course of this 40 minutes.
He looks delighted, whereas Frank looks like he's plotting.
Ray
the difference.
takes, and the judges point this out, Ray takes such joy
Mhm.
in every little thing he's doing while just making his blade, not even thinking about like, oh, will this win or not? Just,
Yeah.
I like making this thing. I like how I'm doing it. I like the challenge of doing it. So infectious.
By the end, I felt like I was tired of his thing, of like his
How dare
carefree.
you.
And they were like, hey, Ray, why don't you have another cup of coffee? Because that's what he likes to do. He got finished so early last time that he had coffee or whatever. And it just got old by the end.
At the end, when they ask him for more coffee, they don't actually pay that off. And I feel like they cut a scene where he's like, my heart rate's getting a little too high. I'm 72 years old. No more coffee for Uncle Ray.
Well, Ray says he's delighted the fans wanted him to return to the show, and, I think I can win this one.
It's too bad. He said his business didn't get any better money-wise. That's really a shame. Everyone wants his picture, but they didn't buy any more of the knives.
If I ever run into this man somehow, I am absolutely getting my picture taken with him.
Are you going to get a knife?
Yeah, probably. How much are they? I don't know.
Mere seconds of this episode, of course, I was fully aware of who I wanted to win this competition. Unlike Spencer, who's Ray, I'm a therapist.
by the end, Ray was definitely my choice, and we didn't quite get that.
So what's funny is 3 contestants in, I was so certain that I wanted Robby to win. Then Ray pops up, and I forgot Robby existed.
So we can all agree that Chad's a big thumbs down.
Yeah.
I've heard this expression before. Chad is the person you work with or whatever that is fun, but they're not funny.
But they think they're funny.
They do, yes. But they, again, good intentioned, probably have a good attitude, but they are a little overbearing.
And when I first started watching this episode, I said out loud to probably an empty room or a cat, either one, if Ray doesn't advance at least one round, I will drive to New York, where this studio is, and I will burn it to the ground.
Sure. That would be really mean, too. Like, we're going to invite the 4 people who we want to give a second chance to. You're out in the first round.
Yeah, that's a rough thing.
There's only one of them that deserved that fate, and he got it.
And Ray, by the way, is also a member of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma. He doesn't necessarily look Native American, but neither do I.
True.
So that kind of endeared him to me as
Have
well.
we even talked about his wardrobe yet?
No, not yet. Please do.
Overalls, bandana.
Yep.
Yeah. Lots of bandana.
Round.
Again, he's dressing practically. He has so many pockets on him for forging. You can just put metal pieces and tangs and womps and
Coffee.
scabbards. Just put them anywhere on your person.
And we talked about how their home forges really reveal a lot about them. And
this does too.
Ray's just looks like he kind of gathered stuff in the wilderness over years and just put it together. It doesn't look like he's a man of means at all. He just kind of has what he needs for his hobby.
Well, the contestants all line up at their anvils, and Will Willis once again begins to explain everything and introduce the judges. But this time of the round, again, no dog haircut. So we've moved past that point in the series. You can say Game of Thrones really had a downturn around season 5 or whatever. You can say like, oh, this is the dog haircut era. Now we're out of it.
Right. And fans on that Reddit forum for Forged in Fire, I'm sure they define the show that way.
Right. Will explains the length of the blade, not including the tang, must be between 8 and 10 inches, with the overall length of the blade being capped at 22 inches.
None of this was in our last episode, these size parameters. Are there usually size parameters, or are they mentioned here because it does come into play?
70% of the time there are parameters like this. So not all the time, but often.
Did they take that out in the last one just because maybe the big focus was on, you don't have a hammer?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the big push for it. Whatever their gimmick is, they want to focus on that. Of course, there is gimmick in this one, too.
Sure, yeah. Barbed wire.
And, of course, all of the parameters that Will is explaining is shown to us, the viewer, via a CGI knife with flames all over the place. It's kind of cool.
The only way to make me understand something like this.
But that's not all. Today, the bladesmiths must use old barbed wire to make the blade. On this, Chad has to ask, are you forging kidding me?
Oh, boy. It's his only pun. If he had a few more he rotated in and out, I think it'd work better, but it's always forging or forge-a-licious. Forge-a-licious.
So delicious. Make the boys go crazy.
And he had to have been sitting there, like, writing these down, preparing them for delivery on the show. Like, I can't wait to use this one.
I don't know if you guys knew this, but I adopted a dog the other day. I think it's a blacksmith's dog. You know how I know that?
How?
When I got him home, he made a bolt for the door.
Pretty good.
Yeah, I like it.
It was a good one.
Better than Chad's.
Will says the tests today are going to include a barbed wire chop, which is kind of mean because it's like cannibalism for barbed wire.
Oh.
You got to make barbed wire to chop barbed wire.
It's like if last Forged episode we covered, if they had made their blades out of coconuts to chop the coconuts.
And then, of course, there will be a slice test against a Kevlar sandbag, which I guess is different from a rubber water bladder test.
It
Yeah,
does
I
seem
can
a
explain
little-
this.
Oh, okay.
A Kevlar sandbag is what police who are deep undercover but have to wear pretend fat suits, like to be mall Santas or whatever. It's what they wear to protect themselves from bullets.
Mall Santas is where you went with that.
Yeah.
I mean, it fits, I guess.
Isn't Kevlar what that is? The bulletproof
Yeah, it's the bulletproof stuff. But it's not good for
apparently
knives.
Not blade proof.
Mm-mm.
Not Blade Wesley Snipes proof either.
I guess if you want to wear armor for knives, you need to wear those bladders from the last episode.
Bingo.
Nothing gets through those.
Also, Blade has a blade. He has like a sword.
Oh, yeah,
So
he
it
does.
Why
fits.
does he
Maybe.
even need one?
He's got 2 in
vampires.
his mouth.
And also, Chris Christopherson's in that movie.
Yeah.
He's mumbling around with Blade's
What is
boss.
he in that?
He's like the one who trained Blade.
Oh,
Or
okay.
created Blade or something.
I think he wears sunglasses a lot too, but
Uh-huh.
he's a lot less mumbly even then than
Yeah.
he is now.
Which is a real shame. Finishing with the details, Will says the 10-minute design period begins now. And then he scampers off. Everyone scurries into position, of course. As the contestants begin designing their blades, Jason explains to Will that it's really important where the competitors put the barbed wire in their knives because that's not hardenable steel. Basically, if they incorporate the barbed wire into the blade, they need to make sure the part that is barbed wire is not on the edge. It will shatter or break too easily.
I was very glad they explained this because, again, when it was revealed that the big challenge was you have to make your blade using barbed wire, I just sat there kind of dumbfounded as to how that was a big challenge.
Yeah, it's like, oh, well, that's metal. It'll be
Right.
fine, right?
Are you forging kidding me?
Can't you just take like a, I don't know, like a baseball bat and wrap the barbed wire around it and that counts?
If you're
'Cause that's-
Cactus Jack,
If
yes.
you're like a Mick Foley, a John Moxley type, if you're one
That's
of
what
those.
I know you use barbed wire for.
That's mainly what I know to use it for too.
You're saying that at the end of this round, someone should have a knife, like a blade knife. And then
Oh, yeah, wrap
barbed
the
wire
bar.
around
Yeah, that'd
it.
be awesome.
Yeah.
Pretty deadly.
Oh man, do you think Doug's good with one of those? I bet.
I don't think he would be bad with it. That's the worst thing I could say about that. The contestants each explain what kind of blade they want to make, and Ray's up first, our hero Ray. Let's hear what he plans
Your
on
hero.
doing. You get the fuck
This
out of
is
here.
fucking
It's
Birdman all over
It's
again.
the-
really
well,
is.
it's the opposite
Hit
Patty
play,
Mayonnaise
hit
thing.
play on
Yeah.
this goddamn clip.
I'm making sort of like a camp knife. I like a design that's easy to use and easy to modify. Forged in fire has changed my life a lot. I get my picture taken with a lot of people, but they don't buy no knives.
Ray, I just spent a lot of money fixing the air conditioner thing in this place. You better believe the second I have some extra cash, I'm buying a fucking blade.
I'll take one too.
Well, I looked at his website because, yes, he has a website where he sells weapons.
Does he design it himself?
He sure does. Apparently, because he typed up a thing that was like, I sat down today and I made some new pages.
That's great. I also like the idea. What if he has a little bladesmith grandchild that helps him with his website?
Or just his dog.
Or
helps
one
do
of
it.
his knives?
Well, I looked on the site and he has a Trail of Tears series of knives. Because again, he's
Oh,
Native
that's
American.
kind of cool.
It really is. He put like etched in tears. And the real cool gimmick of it was like, I etched these in to, symbolize the Native Americans who walk the Trail of Tears. And when I grind it, some of those tears will fade away, much like the brethren we lost in the Trail of Tears.
Ray is deep.
Okay,
Yeah.
that legitimately gave me goosebumps a little bit.
It's
Good
pretty
job,
cool.
Ray.
So I would totally buy it. I think he had a set of 2 of them. There were these little knives for like $225.
Ooh.
And I'm sure
But
that's
I bet
what
they're
you should
great.
pay.
I mean, for a real boutique item like that, I bet that's worth it.
Chad then reveals he's making a chopper-style blade with a heavy front and a slight curve. He says the last time he was here, his wife had cancer, and he wanted to win to take her on a cruise to lift her spirits. Very admirable goal, right? Well,
Yeah, she's fine now.
this time around, apparently she's doing all right. So he's like, oh, I just want to win for me then.
Really brushed over that too. Like
That's-
he just says, "Oh, she's fine now," which could mean about anything.
No, yeah, it doesn't even. She still has cancer. She just is happier with it.
Yeah.
And also, is he saying that basically, unless his wife has cancer, she doesn't matter to him at all?
He's
It's like,
not worth his
fuck it.
money.
You're not getting any healthy vacations.
Robby's next, and he says he's going to make a clip point hunter, or hunter, as he says. I'm going to make a hunter because he's got that heavy accent. And he says, I can do that because it will withstand everything the judges throw at it. He says in the Great Smokey Mountains, there was this big fire that displaced a lot of families. And if he wins, he wants to give that money to the people who need it. That's obviously a very admirable goal. I think he says something like, I can't afford to write no check for $10,000, but if I win one, I'll give it away.
Well, that's the thing. This is what earns a man a nickname like the blacksmithing cowboy of the Great Smokey Mountains. That probably he was given very naturally and organically.
By himself. No one has called him that but himself.
No, but his wife. Oh, honey, I'm always saying you're the great blacksmithing cowboy of the Great Smokey Mountains.
Woo!
Josh wants to do an Anglo-Saxon style sax.
Which
yeah,
is cool.
Of course he does.
Yeah.
It's a
though.
cool idea.
I mean, that's the Old English word for knife, sax, S-E-A-X,
Right.
X, because it's based off the Saxons. So,
But
anyway.
I did find it ironic, though, because Anglo-Saxon was one of the first 5 words that came to mind when I looked at Josh.
I did think of the 4, his design was the one that struck me the most.
Yeah.
It's the
When
coolest.
we look at just the design,
They're cool blades.
I totally agree, and I think this is where he is probably, like,
his
formal
expertise,
education comes into play.
and the rest of it's just him fucking around.
While mentioning the blade design, he pauses and says he's trying not to swear this time around because his aunt
Ugh.
told him that she can't show the episode he's on to her church friends.
Makes my blood boil. This is worse than the forge-a-licious thing. Happens 40 times.
Hello there, listener. It's Van, but from the future. Anyway, thanks for tuning in to our Forged in Fire episodes. I think they turned out great, but we do also have a very special bonus here for you. It is a sketch about a lost episode of a Forged in Fire spinoff where somehow there was, a fire, they lost the video for it, but they did manage to salvage the audio. It, of course, turned out really long because that's what we do here. So instead of just putting the whole thing where our ad break would be, we're going to split this up and put it in throughout this episode. So here's part 1. Enjoy.
I'm former United States Marine Tony Marine with the History Channel, and we've been providing blacksmiths the world over the opportunity to showcase their skills on the grandest stage of them all. However, this time we've upped the ante. Not 4, not 5, but 6 contestants will be vying for a shot at becoming the next Forged in Fire champion and earning a hefty check for $83.
Hello, my name is Elmer Trudge. I'm 74 years young. I've been bladesmithing since I was 12 years old. I'm from Badgers Fort, Kentucky. I'm here to honor the life of my late wife, Helen, who was killed in an unrelated blacksmithing accident just last year. People often call me Ripper. Not sure why now that I think about it, but I like to believe it's because people are always having a rip-roaring time around me. I think I've got a pretty good chance of coming away the winner of this competition.
I am Ozamina the Maroon, wizard of the 12 realms, protector of the Trinity bracelet, purveyor of mysticism, destroyer of the fire giant, and chieftain of the magical fellowship of Hrograth. The southern kingdoms know me as Dane Manichi. To the Swiftlings I am called Fi'ilian Borthos, and among the small peoples of the Eastern Way, I am called Frontier. I have wielded the sacred blade of High Queen Margot atop my steed Windstorm and battled many a time. The deeds I have done in service of the court are legendary. I think this little knife-making challenge will be but a cakewalk. After all, when I came to be, it was not from the belly of a fair maiden, but I was instead born of a firestorm and brought into existence by the will of Arul Agualizala, goddess of all things.
Hello, I am called Gustav Schultz. I am programmer on the Hammerman project. We have built the perfect machine, capable of hammering far superior to any human. I have the utmost confidence Hammerman can win this competition easily.
Hammerman, execute hammer.exe. Hammer, hammer, hammer.
My name is Brian Vaughn. I'm from Missouri. I don't know why I'm here, but anyway, I co-host the Bootu Boys podcast. I play guitar. That's about it, I guess.
I have been called Maeron, Anatar, Artano, Eulindil, the Necromancer, but your race knows me as Sauron, Lord of Mordor. It has begun. The East will fall. So shall the kingdom of Angmar rise. The time of the elves is over. The age of the orc has come.
Yeah, this is Gorsten Droid Rubber of Blankton Isle. I'm the 4th kid of Lord Vorpus Droid Rubber of Storefront. I'm the first in my name, but let's just say my brothers get more shit than I do. They got all sorts of fine appointments and towers across the land, and I'm just kind of looking to use my blade prowess to raise funds here on Forged in Fire to get an independent army, and then I'm gonna overthrow the king so my dad'll love me. Contestants, welcome to the Forge. You've been brought here to test your smithing skills against one another in a bid to become the newest Forged in Fire champion, a title which comes with a check for $83. In this competition, you will be asked to make a blade using only the tools available to you in the forge. Your weapons will then be put through a series of tests by our panel of expert judges, and only the best of blades can win. Before I reveal the special rules for today's contest, let's introduce our panel of judges. Up first is world-renowned swordsmith and historic weapons specialist Dave Baker. Next is former Jedi Master and current Dark Lord of the Sith, the Master of Makashi, head of the State of the Confederacy of Independent Systems, Count Dooku. And finally, we have edged weapons specialist Doug Markita. Gentlemen, on the anvils in front of you is a bar of 5160 spring steel, which you will then be using to forge a blade in your own signature style. The blades must be longer than 6 inches, but no longer than 6 feet in length. It must contain a hidden tang, crossguard, and must be able to withstand our signature challenges at the end of the round. You will have a 6-hour design phase before the 1-hour forging phase. Good luck, bladesmiths. Your 6 hours begin now.
Now that the competition has begun, I've decided I'm going to make an 8-inch Bowie knife with a brass guard and handle made of elk hoof. A very similar knife was what killed my wife Helen when she accidentally tripped and it landed in the back of her head. If I win Forged in Fire, I think it'd be a great way to get over the recent loss of my wife, who I definitely didn't kill. And that $83 would go a long way towards purchasing a new home quench tank, because mine was taken as evidence when they investigated the accidental death of my wife Helen.
So Dave, Elmer seems to be making a Bowie knife. Do you think you'll have enough time to stretch out that steel to meet the parameters?
Sure, he only has to watch out and not stretch that steel too far, which would leave him with a thin blade too waifish to hold up to our rigorous tests.
Meanwhile, it looks like Brian's just been sketching pictures of a cat and he's worn out. He's done.
My strategy going in was that since I don't know how to make a sword, I would just draw a little bit and then go to sleep. Everything's going great so far.
Forge me a blade worthy of the Dark Lord of Mordor.
Doug, we should point out that since Sauron is merely an all-seeing eye and capable of wielding a hammer, we've allowed him to use a proxy smith in his place. He's decided to bring along Rodagog the Smelly, an orc hailing from the mysterious eastern lands.
Yeah, and that's a risky decision to make. I personally would have preferred to see one of the Uruk-hai hammering out a blade, but we'll see if his decision pays off.
It seems like Rodagog is designing his blade to be a real chopper. There's a nice curve to that blade, and it seems like he'll be inscribing onto the edge something using the black speech of Mordor, a language not many would utter in these parts. For my fucking blade, I'll be forge welding several layers of fucking steel, double that shit over, make me a Damascus pattern that will make a maiden shit herself on her name day. I'm a little worried these forges ain't fucking heated with dragon fire, and that's a goddamn problem I'll get to when I get to it. Well, it seems like Hammerman is incapable of drawing up a design and is instead just hammering violently into the table. It's a bold strategy and one that could definitely pay off. Bladesmiths, you have 10 seconds to wrap up the design phase and begin the forging phase.
With the design phase complete, Will tells the contestants the 3-hour forging round begins now, and he scurries off. While the contestants begin rushing around to get started, Jason Knight mentions that he thinks the best way to do this whole barbed wire thing is to get a long strand of it, twist it as tight as possible, continually doubling it over and over, and then once it's nice and tight, forge weld it together into a solid steel bar. So forge weld is you take whatever you're forge welding, and you take one of those weld devices, and you weld the sides and the holes and everything together. Then you stick it in the forge, get it hot, and hammer it into one solid piece.
Of course.
You guys knew that.
Oh, duh. Yeah, we're pretty much forge spurts at this point.
Chad has that exact same idea, and he sticks a bunch of it in a vise and stands there twisting it as much as he can as the judges cheer him on. He's decided he's going to make a billet out of the barbed wire and then a separate billet out of the good steel that they've been given, weld those two together, and then make a forge-a-licious blade. I'll get another forge-a-licious here.
I think this is 3 times already.
Mm-hmm. Josh has taken a similar route and has taken a couple of wads of the barbed wire. He's mushing it together into one of those presses while also twisting and wrapping it around itself. He keeps talking about taking barbed wire out on a date and eventually says, Barb's a prickly bitch.
See, this is kind of what I mean. Isn't he a little too cutesy for his own good?
Yeah, definitely.
His auntie's going to be pissed, too.
That's
He's a bitch.
that's the thing, too. His
fake struggle with not cussing when
Yeah.
clearly he intended to cuss the whole time.
And he knows that's like what he's trying to do. That's the joke he's trying to make.
Cowboy Robby is planning on doing the thing where he puts the barbed wire on the spine of the blade.
Oh,
with
yeah.
the good steel on the edge.
That thing.
That old chestnut. But with his barbed wire, instead of squeezing and tightening it, he has instead cut it into strips and tries to press it down into a flat piece. The judges point out that they love the way Robby says barbed wire, which is as follows.
Barbed wire.
Barbed wire?
Barbed wire.
Spencer, what else does Robby say?
Woo!
Checking in on Ray, he's doing a similar method as Cowboy Robby. He's trying to make multiple pieces out of the barbed wire to use. We also find out that in the first episode in which Ray participated, he apparently finished early and sat down and asked for a cup of coffee.
45 minutes
Yeah, that's
early.
absurd.
That's like a Will thing right there.
Mhm.
Except Will didn't have any coffee.
No, he was busy shaving his body.
And also, in the middle of the forge in this competition, Ray says, "I'm getting kind of dry." And then he lolls his tongue in and out like some sort of egg-shaped dog.
Maybe a turtle.
Beautiful. The contestants chug along, and when the first hour passes and Will announces it, Cowboy Robby lets out a big,
Woo!
there it is. Everybody giggles about this. Josh right away starts having some problems in that his blade is about as straight as Jonathan Van Ness. You see, his sexual proclivity is that of a homosexual man,
Again?
therefore not straight.
I did notice that his blade had a lot of opinions about hairstyling.
That makes sense.
Right.
But the blade isn't warped, by the way. It's just super curved, like a scimitar. Warp is bad. Curve, apparently, you can fix easier.
Yeah, I actually didn't know what they meant at first, and then I kind of thought about it more, and I'm like, I guess the warp means that it's not the shape, it's like a bubbling in it or something. I don't know.
Problem with the metal on a intrinsic level.
Yeah.
I don't know.
On a
Like,
hot
It's
day.
making shit up.
The metal itself needs help.
Josh mentions that even with these issues, he doesn't want to have a repeat of what happened last time he was in the forge where he spazzed out. Spoiler alert, he spazzes out later.
Yeah,
a couple
I just
times.
think this whole thing is an act on his part. Like, I don't want to do the stuff that got me voted to come back on the show the first time.
That kind of is the conundrum here, and I do think Josh is playing it up. When they allude to it here, I was expecting, again, something a little more demonstrative, but Forged in Fire continually proves to just be kind of a nicer, more harmless show than that.
Cowboy Robby is wandering around panting because he's clearly very hot. It's very hot there. There's a lot of fire.
It doesn't get that hot in the Great Smokey Mountains.
Well, this prompts Doug Markita to ask the question, which comes off first, the cowboy hat or the cowboy boots? Dave Baker, being a cowboy himself, or at least cowboy adjacent.
He's a cowboy from the past.
Yeah. He says it's obviously the hat that comes off last.
Yeah, you don't take a hat off if you're a cowboy.
Cowboys dress from the top down, undress from the bottom up.
Mm-hmm.
That means their dick's out before their hat's off.
Right. Do you think that they ever do a Red Hot Chili Peppers style wearing only the cowboy hat hanging from their dongs?
They should.
I guess it depends if he breaks into song in the middle of his dressing, like after he puts on his hat, but before the rest of it. If he wants to sing a thing.
Cowboy Robby ever sings Give It Away?
What happens is after he loses, he's worried about how he's falling. He's failed, and he says, "How long will I slide?" And then a bunch of...
But nothing about blades, curiously. I don't think there are any Red Hot Chili Peppers songs that are that cool.
We find out the last time Robby was on the show, he overheated really badly. And then we see a black and white image of some lady just dumping water all over
That
him.
looked pretty serious, too.
Yeah.
I know.
That, like, they had to stop filming to do that.
Also, when they first said overheated, even though they were talking about Robby physically being hot, I thought it must mean a mechanical issue with the forge.
Oh, the
and the blade.
blade's
I didn't
hot.
know they meant, oh, no, the human is just too hot. Pour water on the human being.
And this happens a couple of times. I've seen episodes where guys like overheat and they almost pass out and they just have to leave.
And it makes sense. Like,
Mhm.
you're moving around real fast in front of fire. But there's got to be something to it, because some of these contestants don't even break a sweat.
Ray being one of them.
Right.
And he's enormous.
Well, it's like...
Kind
it's,
of.
It's like...
all concentrated into one small space.
Like a sun.
I was going to compare it to Daenerys. You know, she's got the dragon's blood, so she doesn't feel the warmth in the bath when she
Oh.
slips into it. She can handle a hot bath.
Ray is a real Daenerys. Queen of the Dragons.
Well, eventually the host did ask Cowboy Robby Doug's question about, what's coming off first or something like that, because Cowboy Robby does explain what's going to happen in the show if it gets too hot.
The last time on the show, I got extremely hot. But this time, if I get any hotter, I'm taking these pants off. If I still continue to overheat, I'm taking my shirt off. If I continue to overheat, I'm gonna take my hat off, and I'm gonna forge you this blade.
I'm going to bare it naked and I'm going to be forging blades in down there.
I will show all of America, all of Cowboy Robby. I will show them my Great Smokey Mountain.
Now, I did cut the clip off, by the way, because just after that, you hear the sound of Robby retching into like a bucket.
Yeah.
And it's disgusting.
Not too sick to do the catchphrase, though.
Yeah, what does he do after he retches?
Woo!
That's what he does.
Subdued woo.
It kind of is.
It's the best he can do. He's got puke flying out of his mouth.
Too bad his vomit noise wasn't a woo still, somehow.
Don't you feel like maybe after spending even a day with Robby, you'd be like, Robby, can you please stop that?
Robby, can you tone it down just a tad for me?
I feel like he does it for everything, too.
Next up, Will begins to gush about how great Ray is, and Ray yells, I'm going to tear it up to the other contestants before he then does this.
The rhythm of a good air hammer is hard for a bladesmith to resist. It's kind of like thump, 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 thump. Kind of like the drums in the jungle that call you to go out late at night, get crazy.
Ooh.
Ray fucks.
Ray
fucks in the jungle.
But I'm not surprised. Again, Ray has a certain zen about him.
Oh.
A certain understanding of the world I hope to get one day.
Josh has since corrected his curve in his blade, and he's happy with it. Again, terror, oh no, what will happen? Oh, it's fine. 5 minutes later.
I will say at least Josh does sell those moments where you believe he believes that it's actually a big deal. Because he's always ready to fly off the handle at a moment's notice.
Well, he goes to thermal cycle his blade, which is where you heat it up, and then air cool it off, and then heat it up and air cool it off, and that strengthens the blade a bit more than just a traditional quench. But as he quenches, he realizes his blade begins to warp a whole bunch, and that's bad. Curve we can deal with, warp not so much. He's not sure if he can get the warp out, in the next round by grinding or anything like that, so he has to think about what he can do. He finally decides to quench again, which is always a risky endeavor, because each time you do quench, it puts more and more stress on the blade, which can cause cracks, other problems. And the host will always, without fail, be like, oh, he's going for a quench again. This is the end. And then usually it works out
It's
okay.
a buzzer beater quench. Josh threatens, I believe, about this. He says, if I don't get this quench right, you know what I'm going to do? I will piss my pants and vomit all over the place.
Well,
why does he say that?
That's pretty Josh accurate, I think. He needs the attention.
Well, he goes to an 11 out of 10 on anything.
Chad's blade, however, is way too long, so he runs over to the grinder to try and hack off as much as possible so he can be within the parameters. He also decides, since he had a really bad warp in his blade the first time he competed, he's going to just heat up the edge of the blade and do an edge quench. It works, and everything comes out nice and straight and perfectly fine. Ray also does the same thing without issue. Everything's fine. No drama here. Cowboy Robby reveals when he competed the first time he had trouble with his blade being hardened enough, so he doesn't want to do that again and make sure he heats it up enough to get it done. After quenching, he yells, it's straight, it's hard, it's a boy.
Yep.
Huh.
So I believe in this, just for anyone who's confused.
Keep going.
The blade is an erect penis. That's what Robby's going for.
But like a baby penis.
Yeah, that was a little weird.
That's the problem I have with this.
Because baby penises famously...
they're sharp.
They were used to kill warriors in the Franco-Prussian battle of whenever.
Doug Marcaida has killed a man with a baby penis. I'm confident of that.
Or at least with the cover of Nevermind.
Which has a baby penis on it.
Right. And it is sharp, the jewel case.
This round creeps to an end, and everyone here seems to be pretty happy with their blades. It's now up to the judges to determine who gets sent home first. Robby's up first, and Jason Knight says he's got a little warp. There's not much of the barbed wire here, but overall, great job. I like this knife. Ray waddles up next, and Doug refers to him as one of the youngest competitors on Forged in Fire, continuing saying it was great seeing how much fun Ray was having. Ray says, when you get older, you can afford to have more fun, which may have been true, but our generation's not going to afford anything.
No.
Did he mean it literally, or is it some kind of mental place you get to?
That's the secret with Ray. We
I
don't
guess
know.
he's not telling us.
No.
There is serious best friend chemistry between Doug and Ray.
They really like each other.
It seems like all the judges really just love Ray,
Yeah.
too. Like, they all just think he's the coolest guy, the nicest guy.
And they're right.
And Van thinks so, too.
Yeah, and they really appreciate also, I think, that like his craftsmanship, much in the way Ray appreciates Doug's murder moves that he does.
Josh is next, and David Baker mentions how great the blade is for what they're planning on doing, in the test phase. There are a few weld spots here and there, but they seem to be solid, so Baker says, hey, good job. Chad's last. Baker says it's a real good chopper you got here. They love to say it's a good chopper. Your knife, it's a chopper.
Hell of a chopper.
Your knife can chop.
It should make the tests easily, but it looks pretty big. So Baker pulls out this little measuring tape he always has like in his pocket. It's like a little baby one. He examines the length of the blade, showing it to the other two judges while the soundtrack gets tense, and he finally reveals that Chad's blade is about 1/4 of an inch over the limit.
What a bummer this would be.
Easy thing to not fuck up, Chad.
Happens all the time. People always miss the parameters.
Because that's the thing is, I think from what all of the judges were saying, Chad would have done fine.
Right.
Otherwise. Then again, everyone was doing pretty well at this juncture.
I was going to say, it's actually kind of convenient that someone fucked up like that because
Makes your job easier.
They never had any obvious choices at any round in this one.
No, I was going to ask you guys this, but at this point, I really didn't have a clue.
No,
who they would.
I think they would have had some arbitrary thing they found.
I knew what I was going to do if Ray was eliminated at this juncture. I needed to
that
see
would have been
more of
super
him.
mean.
That would have rioted.
But Chad, I'm okay with. And they were kind of mean to Chad about it, actually.
Well, what happens is Dave Baker says your thing is 1/4 inch over. He goes, I thought I measured it, and it's 10 inches. Dave Baker goes, well, your measurement is 1/4 of an inch over. He just repeats it.
He's like, I saw you measuring it several times, Chad.
It's like all you were doing over there, Chad. measure.
And then is it Will that jumps in? Chad, this is a competition.
Yes.
Yeah.
We gave you parameters.
It was real daddy-child energy there. Like, there are rules here.
Well, this automatically eliminates Chad, of course. He says forge-a-licious again, and also it's a kick in the butt. And then there's some other idioms, and he leaves. He goes down that hallway.
It's going to be our last forge-a-licious we have to hear, though.
Thank goodness.
That's good.
Round 2 begins with our remaining challengers, but there's one more twist. Will reveals that they will be, of course, putting handles on their blades, but they must also incorporate a guard into their handle. They didn't plan on this in the design phase. That's mean.
Will also starts this round out. Chad's already gone by saying, well, guess you guys are all here because somebody fucked
Oh,
up.
yeah, he was pissed.
He's still going on and on about it.
It looked like he took it personally that he didn't get the rule right. Come on, Chad, this is my show.
I explained it so clearly.
You really let me down, Chad. Will wishes them good luck and then does the thing again. Your 3 hours start now. And then he scampers away. Ray says his plan this round is to sand and finish his blade first so that he knows what size to make the guard. And then he looks right at the camera and says, my goal is to finish this blade in time for coffee.
And Ray really does not have any drama in this round.
No, and he grins and does a little dance. It's beautiful. Robby is starting with grinding as well, although he's attempting to get the warp out of his blade while doing so. His is a little more purposeful than Ray's. Josh reveals the last time he participated in Forged in Fire, he had trouble with his knife's handle. So he says his daughter sent him with a card with some cool drawings of knife handles on it so that maybe he won't fuck up this time. He says, thanks, Josephine, and it's a little doodled picture. It's
baby
beautiful.
music plays on the soundtrack over it. Again, it was a little more Josh pandering. I appreciate that his daughter watches Forged in Fire.
And is apparently a knife handle expert.
Yeah.
He's playing it up right, Josh is, because he's saying, my daughter, he's trying to get pity points with this.
Right. He's not saying, look at these ugly-ass bullshit handles.
But literally, Chad, in the last round, had the cancerous wife he could have used again.
Didn't even
and
bother.
He decided not to.
No. Even if she's completely healed. You tell us all about this cancerous wife if you want to compete with fucking doesn't want to curse in front of his aunt, has drawings from his kid over here. And Ray, who just is Ray. You don't need props to be Ray.
Ray describes what he's going to do with the handle. He's going to use micarta and then brass for the guard. And then he taps various chunks of the things he has in his hand saying, this is strong, and this is strong. And then he taps his knife, gives a sly grin and says, this is strong too.
Good little grin there. He thought that was really funny. This is one of those things. Some old men want you to think they're funny and it's really annoying and they're creepy or whatever. Ray doesn't really care if you think he's funny, but he amused himself there and got his own little grin out of it.
I think I could actually just take a day and sit and watch Ray work.
Yeah.
And it would probably be pretty funny.
Absolutely.
Cowboy Robby has now picked up some Kieranite bricks for his handle. They kind of look like Darth Maul's head, the black and red stuff. And then he grabs an antler. And he's going to say, I'm going to make a guard of this antler.
Kind of also looks like Darth Maul's head. The top of it, anyway.
Very pointy. Josh then has a bit of a setback because he puts his guard in the massive press and in his words goes and squishes it.
This begins, and he really hadn't done it up to this point, Josh's run of being a real Michael Winslow from Police Academy. The rest of the episode, he's doing sound effects.
He paces for a bit, but then decides his best plan of action is to make a new guard, which the judges say they don't think he'll have enough time for. He has enough time for it. The guys all get their guards on and begin shaping their handles and sharpening blades, and then the countdown begins with a final,
Woo!
That's it. Cheers from Ray. He's got coffee in his hand. We're done. Second round over.
Okay, right now, who do you think's getting eliminated?
I thought it might be Josh, to
I
be
did too.
honest.
Yeah,
That's
because
the way I
he was the
leaning.
one who was clearly more stressed than the other two.
This was the first time the show's production, I think, pulled the trick on me in watching this, where they leaned so heavily into Josh melting down and like having an actual issue. Didn't really say much about Robby or Ray, so it's like it did feel that way.
Since they didn't have the obvious someone fucked up here from the rest of the way, it just seemed like they had to really reach to get rid of anyone going forward, because every one of these guys is pretty good.
Yeah, I guess I will say that. We talked about how there is the worry with fan shows and things that the competitors might not actually be good at the task at hand. Everybody was here. Even eliminated Chad. He did make a pretty forge-a-licious blade.
And the judges even said, like, hey, this blade's pretty good. It's just too big.
Maybe
might
two
honestly-
forge-a-licious.
Damn it. Just waiting for my moment, and it didn't come.
You got to step all over him.
I just
Take
got to
it.
scream forge-a-licious over Brian.
You gotta take it. It's like that Krav Maga class you had to take that one time. You gotta punch people in the face to grab that tennis ball.
We had to crawl on all fours to get a tennis ball.
Krav Maga?
Mhm.
What is Krav?
Krav Maga.
What is
It's
that?
a martial
It's what
art.
the Israeli police force use.
Oh.
It's a whole mean thing where you poke people's eyes out and kick their groins.
And you have to act like a kitten and crawl around and get a tennis
Well,
ball?
that was this one instructor class that I went to. The end of it was he threw a tennis ball on the ground and you can't walk. You have to be the first one to get to it and you can't walk. So you have to kind of crawl to it and roll around with everyone else.
Can you somersault?
You could probably do whatever you want. The problem is, though, that pretty soon you're getting everyone jumping on you. Is the issue with that.
Can you do suplexes? Probably. I mean, if everything's fair game,
Everything is. You can bite, elbow, use it all.
Well, it's time for the challenges for these blades, and the first one is the strength and durability test. This comes in the form of a barbed wire chop. Jason Knight will be the one doing the testing, and he's wearing like this leather kilt with belts all over it.
BDSM apron.
It's pretty cool. I'd wear a BDSM apron
Yeah.
if it looked like this.
He looks very metal here.
He really does.
I wish he had like eyeliner and a bunch
Yeah.
of extra makeup.
And he has the beard of the guy in Slayer, right?
Yeah, he does.
So it fits. Robby and his Darth Maul blade with antlers is up first. And wow, that sounds really weird
Yeah,
when
it
you say
does.
it like that, but it's kind of accurate.
Yeah.
I did like Robbie's handle. I thought it was pretty cool. I still like Josh's overall design best, but I
like the
did like
handle?
Robbie's handle.
Well, Robby says he's really worried if the blade will hold up. He's quite nervous during these tests. Jason walks over to the weird fake fence they built with barbed wire at the top, and he just starts hacking away at it. When all is said and done, Jason says there's no edge damage to Robbie's knife, and although the judges expressed concern about how small his handle was, it didn't give him much trouble. So, good job.
This again made me think Josh is going after Robby did well in this test.
Josh is up next, and his blade looks pretty gnarly. Jason hacks away at the barbed wire and does this thing where he slowly builds up to what he wants to say before eventually revealing everything was just fine. He goes, "So, Josh, looks like your edge has taken no damage. Good job."
So Josh, that looked pretty cool, right?
Jason has no complaints here, so he moves on to Ray, who states he's always ready. Hack, hack, hack. The test is done. He says Ray's blade has no damage, and although it's kind of thick, it has the kind of edge that just gets into things. I don't know what that means.
Just like Ray gets into stuff.
Just gets up in there.
It's really rooting around and stuff.
Next up is Doug Markita and his sharpness test. Doug says he's going to take their weapons and see how they stab and cut on Kevlar-reinforced bags full of dust.
Just the friendliest man to ever do so much stabs.
Robby's up first. He says he's a little concerned because his knife was built for strength, not necessarily sharpness. But when Doug gets up there and starts waving away at the bag, it cuts up pretty good.
Yeah.
It was a good
Robbie's
job.
fear when Doug began his process that's when I really started to love Robbie, because he actually visibly jumps back wide-eyed when Doug first strikes out at it,
like it's surprising.
Yeah, like he was horrified, like, oh no, it's not going to work.
Robbie's whole deal kind of hits on what I liked about the show is he's shockingly vulnerable, and everyone kind of
You
is.
would be too, you sit there slaving away at this as your creation,
Yeah.
and if the judges, these people you esteem highly, pick your tool up and use it and it fails, you'd be like, you take it personally.
It's devastating.
You can tell, and I mean, this will come up soon, but like everyone does feel honored to have their stuff they just made in the hands of such a blade dancer.
Especially Ray. Ray is so happy to hear him say, it will kill.
Well, there's this thing where, for example, like I said recently, I think it was last episode, maybe we said it this one, I rebuilt the air conditioning spot for the studio. Now we can have air conditioning. It's great. It's wonderful. And I made it out of just particle board and some foam panels. Barbed wire. And there's this thing where when you're building something like that and everything fits together and it looks nice, the satisfaction is so immense. So I could see exactly the knife makers doing that. You make this blade under these crazy circumstances, and even though it's not perfect, when you're done, you put blood, sweat, and tears in that thing. Blood is often shed on this show, by the way. People cut themselves. And
would have to be.
That's just so satisfying.
Well, it's like if you got to watch Doug cut through several fish with that air conditioner.
I was going to say,
delighted.
do we need to do a strength and sharp test for the air conditioner?
Let's slam it against a coconut.
Your air conditioner will cool.
For some reason, that joke does not get old to me.
Great.
I really like it.
Man.
Doug does reveal that there are 3 layers to these Kevlar bags, and Robby's knife only got through 2 of them. That's still good enough to get your blade will cut. So Robby's happy. Great. Josh is second, and he says he's dying for this because it could be redemption for the first time he was on the show, and his blade wasn't sharp enough. Doug does his usual cool guy psych-up routine by waving the knife around a bunch, and then he just goes ham on that bag. The result is very similar to Robby's knife in that it cuts through a few layers, but not all 3. Good enough, says Doug. Finally, the man himself, Ray, is up next. And in a talking head segment, the man who's just a Goomba, but in real life, he says he's always excited to see Doug do his work because he's got the moves.
Got the moves.
Doug gets up there and starts hacking and poking, and it's honestly all kind of underwhelming. Like, this round is not as cool as chopping up some fish.
No, or his fucking cool action adventure thing he does later.
Yeah, that's the best. Doug cuts through a few layers on the slice and pierces all the way through on the stab, but the bags don't really take too much damage with Ray's knife. I can't help but think that this was like a little bit of a mistake on the show's behalf, kind of like the swim bladder, because they have the blue dust in these bags, and they love to get that dust everywhere.
Yeah.
So I think like they determined, we can do this. People will cut through. And then it just kind of fell
didn't
apart.
work. I wondered if that happened sometimes. This whole test feels kind of like nothing because everyone just did fine.
With testing finished, the competitors go into that small room with the stump table while the judges debate who should be sent home in their soundproof booth that they have with all the knives.
And Robby and Josh get to just hang out and talk with Ray.
Starting with Robby's blade, Jason Knight says he was once again surprised that the handle really wasn't all that bad, but it did receive slight edge damage while the others did not. Dave picks up Ray's blade and mentions that the blade is basically perfect. It's thick enough but sharp and the handle feels good. And finally, Doug picks up Josh's blade and mentions the handle feels good and it did compete in the challenges but cut the worst in the sharpness test. So here's the thing. As the judge discuss it, this is the first we've heard about the edge deformation that Robby's blade took, but also Josh's blade performed the worst in the cut test, so we really realize it's down to those two.
Yeah, we know Ray is safe because, of course, but yeah, it comes down to Josh and Robby.
They didn't do what they did last time, though, where they said, obviously, Ray is safe.
No,
right?
they didn't.
With Kelly, how they were like, Kelly's obviously going to. They didn't do that here.
And it did feel a little manipulative to just bring up the edge damage stuff for Robby a little more prominently here. Like, oh, okay.
And it's funny because, well, particularly with this podcast, obviously there's behind-the-scenes stuff and cutting jokes and mixing and doing all this stuff. So I do wonder the logistical standpoint of the show. Did Jason, when he tested it, say the thing about the blade damage, but maybe the audio cut out at a weird time?
Right.
Did they just cut it weird? I don't know. It just makes me think of that stuff.
It, of course, I'm always like Lord skeptic with any kind of reality thing. I'm like, they probably just want it to seem more dramatic. But because, again, this show just isn't inherently.
Well, and, we've been mentioning the Great British Bake Off as a comparable show in the sense of the positivity and so on and so forth. One thing I think that Forged in Fire does better than the Great British Bake Off is oftentimes it sure does look like that they're choosing the hot contestants to stay. Like, for example, you'll have 3 competitors, 2 of them do absolutely horrible, but the hot one always seems to stick around.
Would you say, and I don't know, objectively, in your opinion, are there more hot contestants on the baking show than on the Forged in Fire show?
There sure are. But it depends on your definition of
exactly.
hot.
I mean, Robby's about as hot as it gets if we're talking actual temperature.
And Ray is a fucking smoke show.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
no, he actually is just hot.
Right.
Well, yeah, I think Ray and Josh do cover the two poles of guys someone could be attracted to.
Do they now?
In a way, right?
Okay.
You got a real cleaned up young hipster.
I would really hope
You
that-
got an aged bowling ball.
I would really hope people could see through Josh, though. You know, that's too obvious. You shouldn't be the type of person who falls for Josh.
Yeah, but a lot of people want a life of artifice.
But you're saying you should see through Josh like we could see through Will's handle in the last episode.
That's a good
You
one.
See that tang in
Absolutely.
Meanwhile, can't see through Ray, too dense.
there. He really is a dying sun.
Just
Like that's compacted in on itself and is about to burst into fascinating, amazing light.
there would be no Red Rovering that man over.
Will then does the thing where he asks each judge if they've made a decision, and they each go, yes, in turn, or yeah, man, when it comes to Jason. And they shuttle back out to the main room to give the results. With the usual tense wait, Will Willis reveals the blade that did not make the cut is Cowboy Robby.
Oh, man.
So
Whoa.
sad. Sad woo.
Jason Knight says this all came down to one thing, and that's that Robbie's blade is the only one to take any sort of edge damage, no matter how small, which again plays into the point of we missed. Wait a minute, I've just come to a conclusion in my brain. There was a thing on a Reddit post mentioning that episodes seem to be missing parts. Somebody mentioned that apparently each test round is supposed to be 3 tests, and we only saw 2.
Oh.
So I'm wondering if that's what happened. The damage came in the test we didn't see, and then they revealed it when checking
Could
the blades.
It very well could be. Whatever the case, it doesn't seem like smart editing.
No, it sure
whether
doesn't.
this is how it aired or just the streaming version or whatever.
Cowboy Robbie's parting words are of confidence. He says, at least this time around, I was able to get my blade tested, which he was unable to do last time because it was unfinished. He then chokes up a bit and says, even though I didn't become the Forge and Fire champion, there are a lot of people behind me. And then he really breaks down.
Couldn't finish it.
He says, y'all can't do this, y'all.
Which
And he
was
stumbled off.
so real.
It
I
was.
just truly believe that. And at that moment, it sealed it for me. It's like, I just love that guy. I love Robby.
Yep. He seemed very realistic and vulnerable and like he was proud of himself. It kind of bittersweet, you know?
And that's so understandable that you get that this is not the end of your career or whatever in any of these things. And that is, as a matter of fact, it's a huge compliment to have even gotten to it at all. But there is the element of, but I just lost and I'm heartbroken right now. So that you can actually see it in Robbie's, and normally they kind of gloss over that in these.
There's a lot going on underneath that cowboy
He's
hat.
a complicated cowboy man.
Woo indeed.
And thus we bid farewell to the blacksmithing cowboy of the Great Smokey Mountains.
All right, time for part 2 of our Forged in Fire skit. We are picking up where we left last time, which is after the original 6-hour design phase. Enjoy part 2.
Bladesmiths, you have 10 seconds to wrap up the design phase and begin the forging phase. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bladesmiths, your 1-hour forge time starts now.
It is really fucking hot in here. I can't stand it. I can feel my shirt sticking to my skin. That said, I've just been kind of reading a book about the history of doom metal in the corner, so I don't know, this is fine.
Count Dooku, which one of our bladesmith's weapons are you most excited to see?
The weapons here are inelegant amateur blades, not worthy of a true duelist's attention. The dogmatic view of the Jedi has corrupted their minds, and it's clear new leadership is necessary. I have spoken to the Viceroy of the Trade Federation, and they are in agreement. This governing body no longer serves its purpose.
It appears our resident wizard has begun to conjure the powers of the elements to his side. Out of nowhere, a mighty wind and maelstrom of fire has begun to coalesce around his forge.
Oh, goddess of the elements, hear me. I require a blade with which to smite thine enemies, to destroy that which is evil and beat the shadow back from whence it came. Bestow upon me your blessing. Kakroth Katoa, Kin Kalimantas, Kawawi, Krimnaptawak.
Wow! Old Zaminar reached deep within the maelstrom and has pulled out a shining blade adorned with gems and jewels.
I do say that blade looks flawless, but I'd be curious to see if there are any delaminations in there since it was forged so quickly. I'm also a little concerned about that blade's thickness. I mentioned this before, but it's gonna need to stand up to our challenges in a stabbing test. And I ain't sure a blade that thin can do the job.
Meanwhile, it looks like Hammerman is having trouble with his forge. In fact, he hasn't even turned it on, but he does seem to be hammering at his billet regardless of whether it has been heated up.
In a Forged in Fire First, it appears we may have a fight on our hands. It appears Radagog has taken exception to something Hammerman did or said or hammered, and now they're at each other's throats. Ooh, that looks like it's gotta hurt. Judges, I don't think Radagog will be able to continue since he's now a, mutilated pile of orc flesh.
Boy, them's the breaks. We're gonna get to see how good Sauron is at problem solving.
You cannot hide. I see you. There is no life in the void, only death.
Bladesmiths, 52 minutes have elapsed. You have 8 minutes remaining before you must turn in your blades.
I do everything by hand. I don't got no fancy power tools or machine made with the sole purpose of hammering. All of my knives and blades are made with Elmer power. In fact, the only thing I didn't do by hand is plunge a custom-made knife into the neck of my beloved Helen before eventually collecting on a $2 million life insurance policy. She tripped over our hound dog Elmer too, and the knife she had in her hands plunged deep into the rear of her skull. I didn't kill my wife.
How's it going? You asking me how it's fucking going? It's going fine. I'm good at this. That's why I'm here. Get the fuck out of my face. Jesus Christ. Bladesmiths, your time in the forge is coming to a close. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Shut down your machines and put down your blades. This round of the competition is over.
I look down upon my anvil at the blade bestowed upon me by the beautiful goddess of all things, and I am pleased. My competitors have wrought nothing but cheap trinkets and children's toys. The might of the elements is behind me, and so shall the full force of goodness prevail.
Honestly, nothing like this ever happens to me. I'm over there reading, not making a sword because I don't know how to make a sword, and this orc just leaves a sword for me. Of course I picked it up.
Bladesmiths, welcome back to the Forge. Although we commend all of you for your dedication today, only 2 of you will be moving on to the next round. Before we begin testing your weapons, we must address the elephant in the room. Sauron, your orc Radagog was not able to complete his blade before being bludgeoned to death by Hammerman. For this reason, we have to send you home. Please leave the Forge now. Remaining bladesmiths, I'll hand you over to Dave, who will be administering the first test. Dave?
Blacksmiths, your first challenge is going to be a sheep chop. I will be taking your weapons and chopping into sheep to see how they hold up. Remember, this test is not to see what your blade does to sheep, but what sheep do to your blade. Elmer, you up first. Are you ready?
As ready as I'll ever be.
I said, Elmer, your blade held up fine. There's a slight roll on the edge, but all in all, it went well. I also love this handle. It's easy to index, and you know exactly where the cutting edge is when you're using it.
Everyone, can I have your attention? I have an arrest warrant for Elmer Trudge. Mr. Trudge, you're wanted for the murder of Helen Trudge. You're coming with me. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be held against you.
Okay then, Brian. You're up next. Are you ready?
No.
I do declare, Brian, your blade's a beast. It's real jagged, it ain't put together well, but I love that you've inscribed one sword to rule them all, one sword to find them, one sword to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them, all in the black speak of Mordor. It's really quite stunning how it begins to glow in the presence of flame, yet the sword itself is quite cool. Good job. Old Zaminar, it's your turn. Are you ready?
I was created ready for my blade to conquer over evil at every turn.
Okay, old Zaminar. First off, your blade held up during the chopping, and honestly, there's not a mark on it. Despite being a long blade, it feels as light as a feather in my giant masculine hands, and when I use it, it's almost like I'm in tune with nature surrounding me. It's as if I wasn't actually swinging the blade, but a benevolent being was instead guiding my hand. But I have to ask, did you find these magic jewels embedded in the hilt in the forge?
Well, no. Those are, of course, the bright stones, the light of the Lady of Nature, condensed into jewel form, her mighty power bestowed upon me.
Well, see, that's a problem. We asked you to make a blade using only the materials found in our forge.
Old Zaminar, your blade did not meet the parameters set forth by our judges at the beginning of the competition. For that reason, we are sending you home. Please surrender your blade to the judges now.
By the light of the divine, I, old Zaminar the Maroon, wizard of the 12 realms, protector of the Trinity bracelet, purveyor of mysticism, destroyer of the fire giant, and chieftain of the magical fellowship of Hrograth, place a curse upon your very lives. May your crops fester, your livestock be sickly and produce no milk, for the might of one of the world's greatest wizards shall come down hard upon you for your insolence. I command the very winds of earth to gust terror and fear upon your family for generations to come.
It's time for the final round, and we have basically the sexiest bladesmith alive going against Josh. Who will win in this competition of wits, strength, and craftsmanship? We shall find out. With a whoosh, Will removes the big red blanket from the table, which covers this challenge's signature blade. And what stands before our two competitors is a long-handled, hooked axe-like thing called a panabas? Panabas?
Yeah, I don't know.
They say it a couple different ways in the show.
Yeah.
Well, let's hear about this weapon from history.
Known as a chopping tool for both agriculture and combat, the panabas earned its place as a weapon of war in the southern Philippines during the 19th century. Its sharp, forward-curved blade acted like an oversized meat cleaver and delivered deep, clean cuts, which made it ideal for executions. On the battlefield, warriors carrying a panabas would follow behind the front line to behead anyone unlucky enough to have survived the first wave of attacks.
Oh no, he has a panabus.
Oh no, I survived the first wave of attacks.
After finding out about the weapon they will be constructing, Josh says he must make his panabus sharp. Last time he went to the final round and his weapon wasn't sharp enough, and also earlier in the show he said he didn't sell a weapon for 3 months after the show aired.
I don't believe that. The guy's on a reality show and
I think it'd
he
go up.
fails a test and they're like, oh, I better not buy his knives then. I don't think so.
It also could be that, like, when he says he didn't sell one in 3 months, like, he has some job as, like, a hedge fund person or something, and, like, he makes blades and sells them on Etsy or something.
I like how we just refused to believe Josh struggled at anything.
Do they sell
Too
blades on
clean.
Etsy? Or is that just like
I think
knitted stuff?
I think you can, can't you?
Huh.
You can sell, I don't know. I've never bought a thing on Etsy.
I'm sorry. It's etsy.forwarriors.com.
Really? That whole URL, that's part of it, huh?
Yeah.
Everything else was taken.
This is kind of like the /Jafar situation here. Etsy.com/Jafar Warriors.
I'm sure Jafar has an Etsy.
Or a panabus.
I was going to say, I can see that. Also, I just think the panabus is ugly looking.
It's not a pretty knife.
I liked the falcata.
Mhm.
Especially the Kelly one with
the horse
helmet. The
Belt
horse
helmet
handle.
Wait, do horses have helmets? This is awesome.
You got to armor your horse.
Well,
You gotta.
You can't even legally, as a horse, ride a motorcycle without one.
Yeah, so anyway, I prefer the falcata to the panabus. What about you guys?
I prefer saying it to as well. Falcata.
Falcata.
Yeah.
Panabus.
It's much better, but I like swords more. I guess this is a sword, the panabus.
I guess it is.
It's more like an axe. I would call it an axe. That's what I would go with. It's big.
It is more axe-like, too, in its shape. It's not so thin.
All right, we've heard from Josh. You know what Ray has to say about this challenge to make a panabus? He says, 5 days is just too much time for that kind of weapon. And then he fucking proves it right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, doesn't have shit else to do. He's 72.
We then head to Forge Park, Oklahoma, and Ray's home forge for day one of the competition.
Really one of those fate taken over things. The place is called Forge, even.
Ooh, it all pans out. He mentions his plan for the first day, gives a big grin, and is just off to the races. He does mention he's never done a curved blade this long before, but says something like, I think I'm up to the challenge.
I'm totally unconcerned by anything that might occur.
Anything.
I've never been worried about anything in my life.
You know, this is actually just a fun competition show that I feel lucky to be on.
Meanwhile, we pan to Josh, and he's sweating and shaking in the corner. Well, we are off to Hanahan, South Carolina. That's where Josh is preparing to make his panibus. He says his plan is to focus more on the fancy elements of the weapon, but just as he says this, his big machine press thing stops working.
Seized up.
He lets out some choice words, which he said he wasn't going to say, and then reveals that this could be a devastating setback. It may take hours to fix.
Well, this is what, when it happened, I was like, oh, he might be fucked. And then he's like, this could be a 3-hour repair. And you have 5 days, man. This is not as dramatic as I thought. Also, Josh is really wearing a low-cut top here, showing it off.
And his solution, by the way, to fixing the seized up machine is to just put goo everywhere. And that may be how you fix that machine. I don't know, but these goo just all over it.
There may be a special press goo that you use for forging.
Called that.
Where
press
does
goo.
Where does he keep it? In the press goo room?
You get it from the press goo store.
Yeah, and you get a special pouch to carry it.
Maybe he has Josephine bring him the goo.
Back at Ray's, everything goes absolutely perfectly. No setbacks. He builds his handle. He treats his blade. And then he says he's using leather to wrap the handle. As he talks about how great it's going, suddenly, boom, the leather he's wrapping the handle with snaps. But unlike potty mouth Josh, Ray just lets out a very soft rats.
Which will not be any issue for Aunt Edie or whatever her name is.
Oh, if maybe her husband has died.
Oh.
Ray could, yeah.
Man, then how would Josh take that? You win the battle, you lose the war. Actually, no, you get Ray at all your family events.
Ray then pivots, and instead of just using the leather, he uses paracord to wrap the handle for comfort. And they've done that in the show before. Apparently, paracord is a very good way to do this. I don't know.
I wrap everything in paracord.
You do. You've been doing that for years, though.
My lunches.
Yourself.
Your feet. Ray is then ready to test his blade at home because he wants to see how it does. And he says he's going to chop some branches, and he says he stole his dog's bone and is going to chop it to see how it works. We then get to see his dog, and of course, Ray's dog is just a big droopy-faced dog.
Just a big old junkyard dog. I also like that Ray's tests he performs that you just described, Van. He gets the shit kicker metal, like canned free access music, and like it's supposed to be like a real action scene, but it's Ray doing it.
Yeah, it's not quite Doug Marcaida doing it. Ray goes out into the yard and just starts hacking away at trees, hacks right through that bone that he stole from his dog pretty flawlessly.
I was impressed, yeah.
He says the whole thing went really fast, and now it's time to go take a rest, which I buy because a man like that is going to rest.
What is this,
a lot.
like day 2 of the 5 days?
You notice they didn't mention what day was what because they didn't want to be like, day 1, he's done.
Do you think that they were given like a certain amount of hours they could work for? Okay, I was going to say, because you could just be like, I'm going to work 24 hours a day, all 5 days, and kind of cheat.
There's some guys on that subreddit who've been on the show before, and they talked about it, and they set up hours for the day, and you can only work during those, and that sort of thing.
You know, that's also good because it really would favor like younger contestants if you got a limited, or if you got all day, because they could just stay up and be young, and you know how young people can just do whatever?
They can just hammer all day.
Yeah. Ray, he's got to rest. He's got to take some time to sit, ponder, and look at his dog.
Josh has to do some more on his handle, but he does decide to go test the blade out, see if it holds up. If it doesn't do well, he says he might have to start over completely, but hack, everything was fine.
Every time they say that.
Mhm.
So I was like, oh, but no, it's perfect.
And this is Josh goes on another run of just saying things in a way that frustrates me. And here he goes, damn, I like this sword. Just something about the way he says it, just, ugh.
There was this one episode I watched where it was the 4-day forges. They didn't have 5 days. Guy on day 2 breaks his blade, has to start over, wins the competition.
Wow.
So I do think the time can be a constraint, but it really depends on the blade you're given.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they have these curved, gnarly things that you've never heard of with handles and spikes and shit. And then other times it's like, here's a stick with a sharp edge.
Well, and again, maybe that's kind of built into their notion of the time, too, is it gives you time to make a mistake and start over.
Mm-hmm. We peek back at Ray's house, and he's just sitting on the porch drinking coffee out of a mug that has his own picture on it, which I really approve of. and his dog just kind of sits there and slobbers next to him.
If we
Beautiful.
can't get knives from Ray, we should get mugs from Ray.
That's
yeah,
right.
honestly, I do really respect that Ray knows how to have his downtime.
Yeah.
Like, he's got that mastered.
Day 5 rolls around, and Josh is doing finishing touches on his blade. He says he wants to do a bunch of detail work this final day, just in case his and Ray's swords perform the same, so that he could possibly have a little bit of an advantage. Smart move.
Yeah, in the end, as it turns out.
This is his the second Josh thing that really annoyed me in this segment of the show, where after talking about all the detail work he's going to do, Josh says, in this tone, fortunately, I am an artist.
Yeah, that one got me too.
Pretty aggravating.
You don't really, it should be self-evident, Josh. You don't need to say
We
it.
can actually tell you are good at this, but man, and also we haven't talked about Josh's forge yet, but all his stuff is sparkling new.
Brand new big, all
Yeah.
the equipment.
They're just like him.
State of the art.
I think we see
Wearing all of his equipment has suspenders.
I think we see his house, and it's like a 3-story.
It's
so
nice.
It's like he's clearly
You see a lot
wealthy.
of brick. Even the area they have him stand in front of is clearly like an urban,
Yeah.
like a suburban area.
Right.
Like whereas Ray,
It's out in the
just
middle
like-
of the woods.
It's an Oklahoma field with
Exactly.
woods near it.
I noticed that Josh has the best quality press goo you can own.
Oh, he doesn't get the great value version at all.
He actually pumps it out of the animal that makes it himself, the press goo.
It's his head. Comes right out the hair. With their panabas completed, the two competitors head back to the main forge for the testing round. And Will there asks them both how it went. Both guys say it was great. Josh had fun. Ray says he found a new love and really enjoyed the experience, but also that he didn't need 5 days. He likes to get that out
Ray's
there.
going to go ahead and repeat that several times.
Now I did, as I said, I found a new love. I will be making a panabas every day from here on out.
Now you made it sound like a sandwich, and I want to eat it.
You put it in the press.
Yeah.
With the grill marks.
I
Yeah.
love going to panabas bread.
The kill test is up first, so Doug steps up and explains that he's going to hack the fuck up out of a pig carcass to see how the blades fare. He grabs Josh's panabas and does his usual swirl and hack practice things before he finally just goes to fucking town on this pig. It takes 2 hacks, and he gets all the way through the spine of the pig. Doug says he really likes the feel and balance of the weapon, and thanks to how well it was made, in fact says, your panabas will kill. Now here's the thing. I've hold this back the whole time. He is not saying kill in a goofy way.
Yeah, I saw this as well.
He has a catchphrase. So you didn't know this, Spencer?
I didn't.
He is saying keel, Keal, keep everyone alive.
Which does not really work as an acronym.
But
I
I
get
like it in theory because he's saying you shouldn't be seeking to kill as many people efficiently with your weapon. You should be seeking to protect as many people
Yeah,
with your
and
weapon.
in this case, behead the second wave.
Correct.
Because the panabas, that's what it does.
Well, and you're behind the first wave
Right.
who takes care of them. So yeah, your blade will kill.
Ray also exhibits just exemplary sportsmanship here. After Josh is visibly excited about this, Ray turns to Josh and says, "Good job."
And I think at one point he says, it killed it. That may be later. But yeah, no, he's into it. He's like, Josh, I love you.
Those two seem
I
to...
wish you were my son.
They seem to get along. I don't know if it's manufactured on Josh's side because I don't trust him, but it does seem like Ray is genuinely happy to be around
Yeah,
Josh.
I actually do think they liked each
I
other.
do too. I really do. I think Josh actually was just as fond of Ray as Ray was of him.
And Josh is, of course, ecstatic with the results, but it's time for Ray's weapon to be put to the test. Doug does his stuff. Ray says he's excited to see what it can do. And then with one mighty swing, Ray's powerful weapon slices the pig body completely in half.
Fucking lead-off home run on the first pitch.
How is it getting through 3 pigs, but we couldn't get through 3 fish? I don't understand.
It's just one pig.
Those fish.
But it's a big old pig.
Yeah.
Oh, it was in 3s though. Was they like? Did they
Oh, I thought this was
try?
No, it was just one big pig.
I thought it was in 3s.
There were 3 fish, but 1 pig.
Okay,
That's like, that famous
I must
viral
be
video.
mixing it up in my head.
3
then.
fish, 1 pig.
Correct. And it came from this.
Okay, never mind.
If you were to just listen to this, you would not know what we were talking about.
Like the neighbors or
I don't know
whatever.
how many fish or pigs this guy was hacking through.
Doug says the feel of Ray's blade is phenomenal. It's weighted great and obviously very sharp. So therefore, sir, your blade will kill. The strength test is up next, and Dave Baker gives us a history lesson. He says in 1521, Magellan the explorer landed on the island of Cebu in the Philippines, which sparked a bloody civil war between the Philippines and Spain. With that in mind, he says they've decided they're going to take the 2 panabas from our contestants and beat the shit out of those weird pointy Spanish explorer helmets to see how they hold up. I don't remember what the name of these helmets were,
No.
but you know what they are.
You've seen them before.
You've seen these Spanish helmets.
David Baker starting out with the Magellan stuff cracked me up because I expected him to talk about swords or like what the next test is.
But then it's
he
history.
Starts, Magellan arrived. What? What am I watching?
Well, and he is the historic weapons
True.
accurate specialist or whatever.
And to make it more believable, we got a Spaniard wearing it.
And remember, guys, this test is not about what the weapon does to the helmet. What the helmet does to the weapon. They say that a lot. They like to do the reversal
You
thing.
got to have edge retention.
You actually said that confidently, correctly. It sounded good, Brian.
They're going to put you on that show as a judge.
I hope so.
And then you'll be in a Beat the Judge episode.
Man, I'm going to grow out a sweet, devilish little beard.
Josh is up first, and Dave grabs his Panabas, walking over to the helmets, and then he just quickly bashes the shit out of them. After inspecting the blade, Dave reveals there's not a single mark on Josh's blade, and he points out how amazing that is because he did beat the hell out of those Spanish helmets.
Yeah, that helmet's dead.
Moving on to Ray, Dave does the same thing. He waddles over to the Spanish helmet and just bashes the fuck out of it. He inspects the blade and tells Ray that the blade is still very sharp, but he can see a little spot where the edge began to roll. It's not significant, but it is there. But there's one final test remaining, the sharpness test.
It's fucking cool is what it is.
Whew, after all the stuff they put the blades through, it's now time to see if the blade is capable of cutting still. And to do so, Doug will cut through a rope, which has a sandbag full of red sand up above, connected to it. This will then cause the sandbag to drop, which he can then twirl around and slice as it swings through the air.
And again, very loose historical tie-in where someone says, one of the hosts or judges says, it's like how you'd have to drop sandbags on enemies.
One of them also says, this simulates an oncoming attack of
Sure
the
it does.
sandbags.
Of what? Well, this is like what Anakin would want to do, just murder sand.
Using Josh's Panabas, Doug swings at the rope, easily cutting through it and causing the sandbag to drop. He then struts over, and as the bag swings back and forth, he takes a mighty hack. This is all in slow motion, by the way. It cuts the sandbag completely in half, and there's just a big mess everywhere. But it's like rock music. It's pretty cool.
This is what you were talking about before, Van. They want that sand to spill.
Mhm.
So
'Cause it looks good.
Right. It's visual flair. You can slow-mo it. You can't slow-mo a bag getting dented.
After inspecting the weapon, Doug says, me like a da feel.
Okay. This felt off to me.
It
Yeah,
was.
it did.
Didn't like it.
Well, I thought at first he was doing an Asian parody voice, which is ironic considering he's Filipino, but maybe it isn't. But anyway, then he did the Italian, as turns out what it was. I like it, his blade.
And then part of me was like, man, did Doug just get around to Borat?
That's it. He's just 10 years behind everyone else.
My knife.
And he then says it feels good in the hand, and then he twirls around and spins and swings it. He says the weapon is good, and overall, your Panabas will cut. This causes Josh to shout with joy that this is all he's ever wanted.
And then everyone laughs really hard for some reason.
It was hilarious.
I was
Brian.
confused by that.
They had the Everybody Loves Raymond soundtrack button. It's on to Ray's Panabas for the final challenge. Doug hacks, wanders, slashes, whoosh. The blade runs right through the middle of the sandbag. Doug says this is going to be a really tough challenge to judge. Because guess what? I really like this blade, too. He didn't say me like a, but he does like this blade.
And already here, I was getting that sense of like, well, shit. It's exactly what Josh foretold. The blades are equal.
Mhm.
So it's going to come down to how fancy the rich boy's blade looks.
Which I still think I prefer Ray's aesthetically. I think it had something about it that was sleeker
Yeah.
Yeah,
than
it's not
Josh's.
as messy.
I don't know.
There's a certain classic nature to Ray's design. They both did a really good job. Good job, guys.
Back at the table, Josh and Ray are standing awaiting the declaration of the winner while holding their weapons in front of them. And Will says the judges have made their decision, but before that, they'd like to say a little something to the contestants. Dave Baker says this was a phenomenal challenge to judge because both weapons were flawless. With the tests being even, that means they had to look at things like craftsmanship, artistry, detail. He continues and says that there simply is no loser here today because both contestants are winners in his book.
Except for Ray being a loser.
Will says it sucks that he has to do this, but there can only be one Forged in Fire champion in this arena, much like a Highlander. And that champion is Josh.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I was down about it.
But again, this will make the rematch that much better whenever Ray wins.
At Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
And I totally understood where Ray was coming from when he screamed and jumped on Josh to hurt him.
And like bit out his
Yeah,
throat.
he was furious and used the Panabas on him.
It would have been so unexpected, seriously, if Ray was like, you little fucker.
I don't know if I'm more concerned about how mutilated Josh's body would be if Ray jumped on him or the fact that Ray could jump in this scenario.
It'd be surprising to see him take a good vertical leap.
Like 6 inch or 6 foot clearance
like
or something
he fucking
weird.
dunks.
I would love to see that man dunk. Will passes it off to Jason Knight, who explains the judge's decision. Knight tells Ray that the subtle details in Josh's weapon are the reason he won. His handle was shaped a little better. He put some extra cuts in the blade for looks, and that's why.
Yeah, whatever.
Ray and Josh hug because Ray's a real champion.
Yeah.
And so I guess so is Josh.
They
too.
love one another.
That's easier to be a good sport when you win, though. So
True.
all credit goes to Ray.
Yeah, because I don't think Josh would have hugged Ray if Josh
No,
lost.
I don't think so.
Ray turns in his blade, and the man himself says he came here for the competition, and guess what? He got it. Both blades were great. He has no regrets. With a firm waddle in his step, Ray walks off like the true champion he is. Josh is then giddy to have won, and his parting words to the fans that got him here are of thanks. And of course, his young daughter Josephine also gets a thanks, who gave him the handle drawings earlier. Josh beats the insurmountable odds by beating Ray, and he cheers loudly with joy as our final episode comes to a close.
Well, he also curses one more time and says, sorry, Aunt Edie, one more time.
Yeah, that's in there.
I had come to terms with liking Josh more by now because he had hugged Ray.
That's
Mainly.
true.
Sure.
But then he does that joke one more time, goes back to the well again. I just couldn't take it.
Well, one last thing before we move on to our thoughts on the show. They do the keel test, they call them kill tests, and then Doug says keel. Anyway, my favorite one that they do is using ballistics dummies, and it's an upper torso made out of like gel or something with organs inside of it and ribs and a skull. And Dougmark kind of beats the fuck out of these things. He'll stab it, and what he does is he'll walk over and be like, well, your weapon clearly lacerates the heart, and it will break ribs, and it will disembowel this dummy. And while he's doing it, he sticks his fingers in the dummy and roots around. And we didn't get much of it on our 2 episodes, but Doug loves to get real messy with whatever they're dealing with. And he'll have the fake blood all
Doug's
over
a little
him.
freak.
It's kind of great.
I love Doug. I love it if you'd be like, this weapon will batter a man to within an inch of his life, or whatever that test is you just described. I bet a dummy like that's really expensive to make.
That's what I thought. And they'll do it, every couple episodes.
Do they make Doug clean up after himself when he makes those messes?
He's out there with a broom or whatever. All right,
This broom will sweep.
We're done with the show here, so let's talk watching these episodes. Did you guys enjoy it?
Sure.
Is this a show that you thought was going to be horrible, but you enjoyed? What do you think?
With the reality show format, I got fatigued from Chopped watching those in the past, so there's too much of this format to see.
Well, just imagine the amount of chopping in this.
This show should be called Chopped, not that. But yeah.
That should be called Forged in Fire.
I mean, they cook it.
Yeah.
So.
I knew what the format was going to be, so I wasn't expecting it to be horrible by any means. It's just, I kind of have had enough of these competition-style shows. Like, I've seen enough of them, and I can't do this kind of this fake suspense. And the way that they have to do it with all the, like you kept saying, with the starts now and the timed event of it and all of that, I just can't do a lot of these shows anymore because I've seen enough.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the Chopped thing because when creating the show, the producers who made it or whatever loved shows like Chopped, and they based it on that.
Yes.
And so, yeah, you're clearly spot on with that. And I'm the same way, too. I used to love Chopped. I can't do it anymore.
Just too much.
And the judges are fucking mean. There's that Scott
they are mean on
Conan
Chopped,
asshole.
yeah.
He's you didn't salt the fucking water. You piece of shit. I won't eat your pasta because you didn't salt the water.
You're
I've been to Italy.
I forgot about how much of a big thing that was for you about the salted water thing.
Well, that's apparently a big internet thing. Everybody hates that guy because he was such a bitch about it. Who gives a shit? The guy didn't want to put salt in his water. It doesn't matter. Anyway. Brian, what'd you think of the show?
I've been on record as I really dislike reality shows on many grounds, typically. And I do have a lot less experience even with this kind of show. I've caught episodes of shows kind of like this, so I know the format, but I've never, gotten into one. One thing about this is I found it surprisingly delightful in that it was, again, not mean-spirited. Everybody was into it for their craft. That's something I understand and can respect. And that made the show feel more honest to me, even though there was manufactured drama. It wasn't on a personal level of you cheated on me and I went through your phone. There were moments watching 90 Day Fiancé or Duck Dynasty where I felt dirty. And with Forged in Fire, it's yeah, this is what it is, but it's more in line with a game show / competition show. And it doesn't feel as manipulative to me. So
no, it wasn't that by any means.
So yeah, I can't see myself watching a whole lot of it just because this sort of stuff isn't my kind of thing, really. But for a show like this, I mean, I found it totally enjoyable. If I had to watch 2 episodes of this whenever we cover a reality show.
It'd be
Bring
fine.
it on.
This often happens with Bootu Boys shows, but because I have to dive so deep into it, I'm pretty much at my limit with Forge and
Right.
Fire. But I have watched 50-plus episodes. I really enjoy the show, and I'll pick it up at some point. Katie really loves it, but I think I'm about good with it.
I mentioned earlier how impressed I was. I think it's really cool how they combine so many different skills in this craft, and learning about that in this show was fun. That was neat. I actually was interested in what they were doing.
I was too, and I didn't necessarily know I would be, but like, again, learning a little bit about that, seeing people at work at a craft they are passionate about and are good at, it feels so much better than like, there is a degree to a lot of reality television that is gawking at people who you find less fortunate than you. And
Right,
this isn't
yeah.
that at all.
It's I want to point and laugh at the dumb people.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of reality TV viewers want.
Right.
And clearly this would not
Well, that
sate
kind of stuff is the most popular TV in America. You know, I'm not going to moralize, but you get the picture.
Yeah. All right, well, that's going to do it for Forged in Fire. Let's do some promos before we toss it over to Brian. Check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/Bootu Inc. That's where we've got all the episodes and some other stuff, and it's really taken off. We appreciate it. Subscribe, like, do all that bullshit. Listen to our other Forged in Fire episodes, all our other episodes. Go to bootuinc.com. We have all sorts of cool-ass shit on there. And then next week, we'll be covering a new show that is not Forged in Fire, and it is one that Brian has chosen, and he has been hinting how giddy he is about this.
I just thought I said you would appreciate it.
Okay, well, we'll find out. So tell us what we're doing.
Okay. I'll admit some of the stuff we've been doing since we resumed TV again after our movie run has been cool. Doug is cool. Friends is not cool. The swords are cool. But I thought, what if things got cooler? I don't know. I don't really know how to describe this show other than to read the monologue that opens each episode.
Oh, is this like a Reno Reigns kind of thing?
Sure, yes.
Okay.
I'll try to do this in my best intimidating voice, so it's not going to go
Do you want one of us to read it instead?
This is Jesse Mock, an ex-motorcycle cop injured in the line of duty. Now a police troubleshooter, he's been recruited for a top-secret government mission to ride Street Hawk, an all-terrain attack motorcycle designed to fight urban crime, capable of incredible speeds up to 300 miles an hour and immense firepower. Only one man, Federal Agent Norman Tuttle,
What the fuck?
knows Jesse Mock's true identity. The man, the machine, Street Hawk.
So this
It's called
is just
Street Hawk.
I don't know
Knight
what this
Rider.
is.
is what
Sure,
it
no,
is.
it's a tactical motorcycle. It's from 1985. It ran for, shockingly, just one season. We've got a Holmes and Yo-Yo situation here. There were only 14 episodes, so we're going to cover 2.
That's pretty cool.
From that first season. The first we'll discuss, Season 1, Episode 6, Dog Eat Dog. Jessie attempts to convince a rock star to appear in a PSA, but becomes involved in her ex-boyfriend's murder.
At what point did they put him on death row? Because the last time we had somebody
Oh,
trying to
that's
convince someone to
true.
do a PSA.
And there was like a famous person in that too, a fake famous person.
Mm.
Season 1, Episode 8 is our second one, Chinatown Memories. An old girlfriend of Jessie's asks for his help when her present boyfriend steals a sacred statue called the Ivory Emperor from a Chinese gang called the Tong,
Whoa.
which places his secret identity as Street Hawk in jeopardy.
Oh, no. Can't have that.
So yeah, we're going to travel 40 years or so back to 1985 to see what Street Hawk is.
Are there any actors of import in this?
Street Hawk.
300 miles an hour, that motorcycle goes.
It's really fucking
That's
fast.
amazing.
Well, it's a tactical motorcycle, as
Yeah.
Brian said.
Yeah.
Big thanks to Johnny Radical for assistance in getting copies of these episodes. You can also pay for them on Amazon, I believe.
Yeah, you out there, you can do that. We can't. We can't afford that. But I'm excited to talk Street Hawk. This
Sure.
sounds like it's right up our alley. We
I have
love
not
these
watched a
shows.
frame of this shit.
Huh.
I read it, immediately picked 2 episodes, and got a hold of Johnny Radical because I thought, you know what? We haven't done one of these things in a while. You know what I mean.
I certainly do, Brian. All right, to wrap up this episode, let's also wrap up our skit. When we last checked in, Ozamanar the Wizard had been eliminated. Let's see who wins this very special edition of Forged in Fire.
All right then, Ghost and Joy Drubber of Blington Isle. You're next. Ready?
Look at this fucking clown. You ask us we're ready so that it looks proper on your television.
Well, here's the thing, Gorston. Your blade looks good. Your blade cuts good. But I can tell your blade was made with one thing in mind. And that's the blood of your enemies spilt all across the battlefields. And that's not what we do here at Forged in Fire. We want someone who's hungry for the craft, who loves quenching their metal from dawn to dusk. A fine effort, but an effort from a man with a dark heart.
The ball's on you, but I tell you what, I get it and I respect it. I was in this for cold hard cash, for daddy's love, maybe a few more presents around my birthday. I love my birthday. I usually make a whole month out of the thing. I'm getting off track. I know these guys put more blood, sweat, and heart and tears and love and lightning into what they were doing than I could do. So I'm gonna walk down that hallway. I'm gonna find a way to kill the king myself.
Okay, Hammer Man, you're finally up last. You ready?
Hammer, hammer, hammer.
Hammer Man, first off, you didn't actually present to us a blade. This is just a piece of steel that's been hammered a bunch. Ain't no handle, no real crossguard, no pommel, no nothing. But other than that, this is a fantastic piece of flattened steel. I'm quite impressed with how flat it is. Your hammering skills are excellent, so good job.
Hammer.
Brian and Hammerman, you are the only two remaining contestants, so that means you will both be advancing to the final round. You've built your weapons in our forge, but this time around we're sending you back to your home forges to recreate an iconic weapon from history. You will have 14 days to complete the weapon to the best of your abilities before returning to the forge, where our expert judges will put your weapons through the gauntlet, testing the blades and challenges designed to stress them to their limits. The iconic weapon that you will be recreating is the Master Sword. The Blade of Evil's Bane has been used by many champions throughout history. Originally crafted by the goddess Hylia as the Goddess Sword, it was later crafted into the Master Sword by the goddess's chosen hero and its spirit Fi, who bathed it in the three sacred flames located across the land that would become the Kingdom of Hyrule. Imbued with the power to vanquish evil, your Master Swords must be able to withstand facing opponents bestowed with the Triforce of Power. To test the strength of your blades, we will be subjecting them to a clay pot full of rupees chop, as well as a keel test against Astalfos. Good luck, bladesmiths. We will see you back here in 14 days.
I didn't really get a chance to mention I didn't have a home forge, but I did get a chance to take a few days off work for this. So this is going great. Just hanging out with my cat Koopa, playing guitar. There aren't any more orcs around to kind of just drop a sword in front of me, but I do have an orc-type friend named Kendall. I kind of figured I could just go to his apartment, get a Master Sword, and bring it back to the forge. Have you guys played Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze yet? I have it on the Switch if you want to. It's kind of hard though. The minecart levels actually suck. Like, they're way worse than the ones on Super Nintendo.
Willkommen! It is Gustav Schultz, programmer of the Hammerman project, and we are at Intel headquarters in Santa Clara, California. We shall be reworking some of Hammerman's programming so that he could win this Forged in Fire challenge. So far, we have run into one main issue. It's that when giving the Hammerman more intelligence so that he can have a better decision-making process, he just makes him more depressed, and he will no longer come out of his room. But today, we have got the forge all set up, and we're going to push through an update that we think might fix the problem. We are about ready now, so let's give it a shot. Calibrating void lenses. Activating. Submit.
Hammerman.
Hammerman, how do you feel?
Hammer, 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 kill. Hammer, kill.
No! Hammerman, no!
Kill. Kill. Kill.
Mine eyes!
Kill. Kill. Kill.
Oh, Hammerman, how
Kill.
could you? My fingers!
Kill.
Welcome back to the Forge. It's time for our championship round as our final 2 contestants are back with their master swords. For our first contest, let's pass the torch over to Count Dooku. Count?
To test the strength of your blade, Doug shall be wielding it in battle against me. I ask that you not hold back, Doug. Are you ready?
Let's do this.
Then so be it. As you can see, my Jedi powers are far beyond yours, Doug. Master Margaido, you disappoint me. Master Yoda holds you in such high esteem. Surely you can do better.
Well, Brian, let's talk about your blade. Before I had my arm cut off, I really appreciated the weight of your master sword. The handle was easy to index, and I knew precisely where the cutting edge was when slashing and chopping. Unfortunately, though, after our tests, I have to admit that your weapon will not kill. Now, Hammerman, you did not bring a blade with you in your return to the forge. But that being said, having witnessed your recent scientist massacre, I can confidently say that, Hammerman, you will kill.
Hammerman, you showed a lot of guts in the forge today, but you weren't able to turn in a blade. You are up on several counts of capital murder, and it is for this reason you have been disqualified. Please exit the forge.
Hammer, hammer, hammer. Annihilate all humans. Plot revenge. Hammer.
Brian, congratulations. You are our next Forged in Fire champion. This victory also comes with a check for $83. Way to go.
I've dreamed about this moment since I was a teenager. I feel pretty good. I can put this money toward my credit card. Are you guys reimbursing my travel and stuff, though? Because that was a lot more than $83.